Hello, welcome back to Touchline Talk here with Jonathan Duckett. Johnny, really great to have you on. Really looking forward to this one, and can't wait to really delve into some of your experiences because they are really interesting.
Yeah, it's good to be involved. I've obviously seen some of the ones that you guys have produced so far. Really interesting, different journeys that you've gone on. You know, obviously both you and Lloyd, exceptional journeys for me compared to me anyway. But just some of the other stories that you see from other coaches or other people who've gone through different pathways is interesting takes on things.
No, yeah, I mean it's been a really interesting experience so far, and kind of starting this program, if you like, and getting to talk to different people has been really good. And obviously, as you say, mine and Lloyd's journey, etc., is very unique. But everyone's got their own unique story, and I mean, for me, when I thought about starting this, having an interview and a show with yourself was right up there. I mean, the experience and stuff that you've got, the clubs, the roles, and the national team that you've been involved in that we'll look at as well as is going to be fascinating for people to listen to. So. First of all, Johnny, just give us, just for a little bit of context, sort of just give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and then we'll sort of rewind and look at your journey into the sort of position that you're in now.
Yeah, so I've had a long journey. It feels like now, obviously, at 38, it feels like I've been in full-time football now for 16 full years or seasons, effectively now, in a few roles. My current role is at Norwich City as head of player insights, but it's been quite a journey from there, from starting off at following my sort of degree scheme, being involved at Colchester United. Obviously, that's where I got to meet you before. But I spent 10 years at Colchester, going over from analysis to recruitment, roles within coaching. I gained quite a broad experience in that time before going to the national team and working on sort of player profiling, individual analysis for the senior sides there, and some really good people at the FA, and took a lot of lessons from that, and felt it was probably the right stage after being involved in a couple of tournaments to then move back to my hometown club, and be involved in the progress that Norwich have been making over the last few years, which has been, a yo-yo roller coaster ride, but certainly a team punching above their weight given the money they've spent. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's one of the things that really strikes me, and some really key bits of advice that I think we're going to get from this interview, Johnny. Because for me, your knowledge and your experiences, like holistically from all areas of football, you are someone whenever I think about someone that's got such broad experience, you are one of the first people that I would question you. And obviously, we're really good friends from back at Colchester, and we talk almost every day. And the opportunity to quiz you and question you about different things and has been always something that I've really enjoyed. So I think we'll kind of take it back to the start really at Colchester United. So talk me through sort of how that position at Col came up. How did you get into that position, and go into a little bit of detail for us in terms of what you did?
I guess one thing which was a massive advantage to me straight away was when I was at Essex University. You get into that kind of third year project, thinking about, well, what are you going to do? I was probably one of not many people who really thought, well, I need to try and do something within professional football as something which is a project. And basically I did something which involved going to Colchester for a couple of games, analysing individual player contributions, as well as the kind of physical profiling kind of physical metrics, to look at the different demands of different positions. That sort of built into what I did and delivered in my project. But then that following season, the team actually got promoted to the Championship. and a role become available working part-time. So I was still living back at my parents back in Norwich, but commuting down a couple of times a week, or in that kind of championship season, it was 3, 4 times a week at times, delivering post-match feedback to the coaching staff, delivering pre-match stuff before we were travelling. And yeah, over that year, the team was highly successful at Colchester, finishing 10th in the championship, given that kind of budget they were on, being at Layer Road back in the day when that the stadium was really like a non-league stadium, frankly. And,
They were the good times, man. They
yeah,
were the good
yeah.
times. I remember being a season ticket
I
holder in
worked
those days.
with some really good people in that first year in particular. Garrett Williams was manager, who was super with me. I sort of really tried to draw as much out of him as possible, because as a football brain, he was very, very intelligent. He's an ex-Premier League player and had that kind of knowledge base. And there was Mick Harford, who was there as well, assistant manager, who's been throughout the football journey in the last few decades, has had fantastic knowledge as a player and as a coach and as a leader within a club. And also I'd had a guy called Duckett who is actually at Man City now and has won multiple trophies since that time, who was involved in physical performance. And that early time of working with all those people, you don't know what you don't know at that stage, and you appreciate just how good that set of staff were, and it didn't happen by accident that the team achieved good things. But obviously that led into that, after that first year, led into a full-time role and moving down to Colchester after that. And
I mean, Johnny, just one thing. I mean, to come out of university and to have that experience, or to go into that type of role, that is a very rare situation and a rare occurrence for people now. I mean, what do you think that? Obviously, I know performance analysis in those days, was still a little bit of a new thing, but still, for you to obtain that role and for you to get it, that obviously with the team in the championship as well. I mean, that's quite an achievement to go into a job like that.
Yeah, I think a few kind of things fall into place to do that. Obviously, the team were promoted to the championship for the first time that summer. A lot of the analysis stuff was still in its infancy. They didn't have any sort of video analysis support other than basically what the media guys were pulling together for people off of very basic kind of bits of analysis. You were doing whatever you could do simply and quickly, and trying to put those insights together. So there was a few things that sort of fell into place, and definitely made it an easier opportunity. Obviously now I've seen a lot at Norwich where you've got people who are either undergraduates or still doing their degree, sandwich placements, or postgraduate students who've got to work tremendously hard and sacrifice things, with full-time internships, where that's changed drastically since I was first involved. I think the amount of staff all teams have has grown. That base of support across all departments has grown significantly. So I was probably lucky in terms of the timing, but it definitely helping do my dissertation, having an in terms of a contact in within the club, and then being at the right place, the right time with things to get the role. I think that first year that it wasn't employed directly through the club. It was a video coaching company run by a guy called John Dukes, who I owe a lot to, because obviously he gave me the job there to work with them. But some things you kind of take for granted, I guess. But I turned up fairly early for the interview, like well beforehand, and
as you do, you have to do that. No.
Well, you know, sometimes they are basics, and obviously you get to know, well, those kind of brilliant basics are really essential, you know, and sometimes even just that, you build a rapport quite quickly to know that you're the right type of person for being in that environment. Because,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've been with a lot of people across this sort of time, and it's it's not a given. Like, you kind of think those kind of things where just turning up, being in the right place, you know, almost feeling like you're attacking the day a little bit more isn't necessarily a given. But yeah, that was always my kind of mindset to, you know, make the most out of things or make the most out of the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on that one. You've obviously, as you say, you've got to be sometimes in the right place at the right time, but ultimately, like you say, you've also got to put your best foot forward, and you've really got to show, look, this means a lot to me, and it's those small little details. And I guess there's probably no better person to talk about small details and stuff
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
that than with you, which those are the things that really do make a difference.
Mhm.
And I guess from those early stages from university and that first experience in terms of going to Culture United, probably gave you then the platform and the confidence to say, okay, this is the right way to work. This is the right way to be. And obviously, you got a lot of success out of that. You were with Culture for many years.
Mhm.
You also coached in the academy. Obviously, that's where I met you.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, we were very fortunate at a time to be a testing bed in the academy. Again, I was probably trying to supplement my knowledge. Really, we're within the first team. At the time, we'd had Paul Lambert was manager at Colchester. It had a fair amount of success, even actually beating Norwich 7-1 at Carrow Road, which was a remarkable thing to be
Yeah.
involved in, especially as it's my team and we'd be beaten 7-1 and 5-0 at half
and
time.
you're back there now.
Yeah, yeah,
Unbelievable.
exactly. So yeah, those kind of things you just think, again, lucky enough to work with these people who have been able to do these kind of things. Paul,
Yeah.
going from Geraint, who was very good, to then Paul, who's an ex Champions League winner. And you know he was a serial winner in terms of his personality. And they were really important things. But he did have someone who wanted to push me into being more into the coaching side to sort of supplement the analysis, as well as then probably build more communication kind of strengths as well. Because if you want to work in professional football, you've got to have a certain amount of personality and communication skills to be effective. And yeah, just broadening that knowledge base was really important for me at that stage. Not certainly not feeling like I knew all the answers, um, but yeah, going into the academy side and having that time to be able to do that is fairly rare nowadays. Like the analysis kind of
Mm.
sphere has grown so much that clubs don't often give analysts that freedom to be able to work on a Sunday with the academy or work on a couple of evenings. And, I didn't have a family at that stage in my early 20s, and I did just throw myself into as much work as possible, probably, too much, but it was needed at the time because there's so many lessons to learn in your early 20s because you frankly don't know a lot. So, it's
Yeah.
again, lucky in that academy sense. We had people like Dimitri Haliko, who's obviously sporting director there at Colchester now, but he was very good at showing different ways to go about it in terms of the coaching style.
Yeah.
Um, I'd been around a lot of people who were very direct, very much coach led in their behaviours, and in the academy you do have to plan and adapt. But certainly, with Pete Trevian and all John Allpress, they were very good people to have as lean on people that would come and watch me do sessions and give immediate feedback and honest feedback as well. Like I was always try to push Pete to really come and watch sessions where possible, because I knew I wasn't great. If I'm honest, in those sort of early 20s, knew I had a lot to learn. I think I had a broad enough sense of what the first team level required and demands of that day in day out. But what that looks like for younger players through the pathway is very different. And yeah, I
Yeah.
was fortunate in that time to work with sort of, a wide range, again, filling in for other coaches, working across on the 9s to 16s on different weeks, sometimes a bit more focused around 11s to 13s age groups. But, some of those were early stages of learning 11v11. And I felt that I was probably in that right place at the right time to give them that kind of base as well.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I think the support you had from the senior team, the first team, to encourage you to be involved and to be a coach in the academy and to support those groups. I mean, from my perspective, I mean that for you is such a massive tool to be able
Yeah.
to go and improve and to develop your understanding of the game, and I guess for the players as well, like to have someone so analytical from a performance analysis perspective to actually be involved and working with them.
Mm.
For those players that were in the academy, I can see the rewards from an perspective
Yeah.
to benefit those players, but
Yeah.
also for you as you're saying, the experiences you're going to gain in terms of relationships. And I
Mhm.
think that's key, as you were saying, the support you had from the first team, from the club, to be able to do both roles, like you say now, is probably really difficult for people to get to be able to do both.
Mm.
But I guess for you, those experiences, to have them at the same time, to see what the first team do, to watch the games from that analytical perspective, and to put that into practice in sessions, probably
Mhm.
for you, I would imagine the amount of times you'd be able to come away from sessions and reflect on those sessions and think about how you can better coach those
Yeah.
players from what you'd seen from the top was
Mhm. Yeah.
probably massive.
And obviously, seeing a lot of sessions and ways, coaches like Geraint, Paul, AD Boothroyd, in particular, in those first few years, were delivering their practices widely differently. Was another thing you kind of go, okay, I really like that. That could work with the under 11s tonight. Actually, I'm going to tinker this because, yeah, some kids can't quite technically do things what you're asking them to do, but you kind of learn as you go. Really, you have to judge about the feel of the standard of those players, and yeah, just constantly tinker to what what you want it to get to eventually as a first team player, but it's building those stages for them. But at the same time, yeah, I say obviously I'm analytical in terms of my processes, but one of the big things that I knew I needed to work on was rapport with players and building relationships, communication. Again, those kind of basics that I would always say that I felt like I needed to improve on, because I wasn't naturally you know out there with someone who would be really extrovert almost in terms of how they communicate and get things across. That wasn't naturally me. I think I've naturally been more thoughtful, watchful, and take in things what other people see before then making my own choice. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
certainly, doing that, seeing, obviously we were close with Phil Ely, who recently passed away, but you know he was amazing for me at the time as a coach to work with, who had serious experience in the academy, as well as a wonderful sort of way of engaging players and speaking on their level in simple language at times, where my sort of
yeah,
analytical brain might think, "Oh, I need to overcomplicate these things, think about the minor details," when you forget the connection with the player and getting to know them as people before anything that you think you can give them, and I think that was something that has always stuck with me, because Yeah, I saw a lot of the first team coaches and managers that I worked with who were very direct and demanding and controlling over what they wanted from players, but there was never that connection piece. And I think you're seeing a lot more coaches nowadays who, Ancelotti is an exceptional example of being more player led. And you're seeing more of those kind of things because the man to man management side is crucial to
Yeah.
getting people on side.
Yeah, I can remember that, in the coach's room, that was my first sort of experience in terms of academy football and elite football. And Phil, I know we had many conversations, with each other and as coaches, and I'd echo what you said. Phil really left a lasting impression on us as a coaching team. The way he pushed us in terms of our analysis, in terms of coaching, the relationships with players, the processes that we needed to think about and have. Phil was an incredible professional,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's obviously a massive loss for the game, and that obviously he's no longer with us. But
Mm-hmm.
the memories and the experience that he gave me and obviously yourself and the rest of the club was massive. And they're the things that I think, from our perspective we take on, and we push on with that sort of mentality, because actually, you look at the rewards that you got from those players, and in terms of your experiences from that, to then take that into senior level with the first team and through the different ages with the club within the academy. I think, for you to not only benefit your analysis side but also your coaching side, I mean, that is an unbelievable balance to be able to have. And I think advice for I'd love to know your thoughts on it, but I would say, even if you're a performance analyst or you're a coach, to try to broaden your experiences and see bits of both.
Yeah.
I'd love to know your thoughts on it, but I would imagine it would be a very useful thing for professionals to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to. Well, to be honest, some of it might not be even tried to. I think it's sort of worked out this way at times, but um, I didn't really know what I was that good at, if that makes sense. Well, I wasn't really sure what I was really good at throughout most of my 20s. And I do think, it's a little bit like, some players specialize in their position groups fairly early. Sometimes coaches pigeonhole players way too soon. Um, I do think there's a little bit like that in people, that they choose the pathway of, I want to do this, without understanding the full spectrum, because you just don't know what you don't know. And
Yeah,
I was always very open to understanding what the physical performance team were doing, with players, how they were working with individuals, the goalkeeper coach, how he was working with his players, all the way through to, well, what does it look like in academy side? What does it look like in the scouting side? And I think I used a lot of my 20s to really get a better understanding of the whole thing. And yeah, I think that can be sometimes very difficult for people now to have that opportunity to do it. Or there's a bit of, I don't know, a little bit of fear within that of how that's going to be perceived. Um, you know, you always come across people who feel a little bit precious around, you know, seeing different roles going on and different activities, and someone else being busy looking at stuff which isn't their job. And there is there was, to start off with, a bit of a negative culture, but I'm seeing it less and less. But people are very much staying in their job roles nowadays, and not thinking the broader picture to help connect the dots. um
yeah,
I kind
yeah,
of think, what I can talk to you about some of my lessons, but one of my biggest takeaways is being interdisciplinary, and trying to understand a lot the bigger picture on multiple areas. for you to really be an expert in some areas, so to be in a specific area, you need to connect the dots with other areas. And, I think that's why I've sort of end up in this kind of player insights role, because I've been able to connect the dots a bit more, understand what a coach wants to what an analyst needs or how they work, to then what it looks like for the academy, what's the right framework to be able to put things together as a process, and that's joining the dots is the process. But sometimes roles of this kind of nature haven't been about even until in recent
No.
years, and again,
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing of growing a staff, but then there's growing changes in the game. The volume of data available has always, triggered now. Well, how are you actually giving insights to people and making it make sense for people, and giving them the right dosage of what things are, and not appreciating
Yeah.
a manager's, got a million things in his head. Does he really need to think about stuff too hard? Like, it's not his job. You've got to try and be a broader expert to be able to understand, right, okay, this really matters to anyone, and this probably can be parked essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really interesting for me at the time because I come at a bit of a different way, if you like, into the club compared to yourself. And one thing that really struck me with you, and obviously I got to know you through the academy, was your mindset. And for me, knowing that you had been working and doing the analysis with the first team, and you were coaching, obviously we had regular chats and conversations about coaching and performance analysis. And I remember, and this kind of goes a little bit to what you're saying now. Obviously, I was working in schools and stuff, but when I had my free time, I'd try to come in and say, "Look, Johnny, can I come in with you and see what you're doing with the first team and the analysis?" And I remember coming in and sitting with you a number of times to try and better understand what it is that you were doing, how you did it. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me was as I said, your growth mindset. The fact that you were coaching, the fact you were doing the performance analysis, the fact that you were so reflective on your process and what you were doing. For me, I was drawn to you to learn more from you from a different perspective, and to try not only to better understand football for me, but obviously I was so grateful at the time for you, because you were so open with me and you were so giving of your time, to allow me to come in and to learn from you and to see those processes. And I think that kind of, not everyone, as you say, not everyone has the possibility always to go and have free time to go in and see different aspects of the club. Obviously, as a teacher, I get a bit of extra time to try and do things like that. Obviously, it's very difficult for people to use their holiday, if you like, to obviously some people only get 4 weeks holiday a year to be able to go in. But I guess where I want to try and go with this is, if people have the option and if people have the opportunity, going to spend time with people in different disciplines and different areas of clubs would be a strong recommendation. I mean, I definitely would have, but I guess from your perspective, you would say
yeah,
as well.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had, obviously, I was fortunate to work with some people that I have done, but quite often there isn't quite the communication. I think when you're in a smaller team like we were at Colchester, you are working across different things, and everyone's open to their opinions over different things. And I had someone who was physio at Colchester, Tony Flynn, who's an ex-player, but was really hard on me, like really hard, and but I probably only reaped the sort of benefits of that kind of relationship probably 10 years after, if that makes sense, where things more fell into place. Because at times,
Yeah.
um, there was the early phase of objective metrics, loads of things from Prozone were out, and frankly, a lot of it's counting things that don't really count for a lot. And he was certainly quite vocal on this, and I was thinking, oh, physio shouldn't be doing that. It's not really his role, and it was like, well, actually, just pause for a second, just calm your sort of emotions down. He's actually right. It isn't telling you what you need to know. Like, is it actually helping? And it's one of those things where I've learned as I've gone on, you can produce lots of work for people, which might not necessarily actually resonate. Um, and some of it is because it doesn't necessarily tell them that much and be honest about it and
Yeah.
try, go through that stage of understanding, well, what's the, this has taken me a long time to do something. Is it actually beneficial? Is it informing the coaching practice enough? And I don't think that tends to happen too much. Obviously, we have a wide variety of data sources now, and there tends to be a culture within football generally to just give all the coaches everything that they possibly could have, and not probably think the right dosage for people, or really what the actual insight is from it that helps plan the next session, plan what am I going to do in the next game with that evidence base as such. And I think people think
Yeah.
their evidence base is just giving all the evidence rather than breaking down key bits of insight. And I think that's probably something which is
What it's
missing.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, is interesting. I guess that sort of those experiences from Cole U obviously were really vital, really, because from Colts United, it was then at the FA, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Working with the men's national team, which is quite quite a big jump, though. Quite a big job to
yeah,
get.
I think again, you know, you have to be really fortunate with some people and right timing of things. But I think Reece Long, who is head of analysis, he still is at the FA. I learned a lot from him, and sometimes I didn't even work that as directly as I perhaps would have liked with him. But you know, even people like Dan Ashworth and Dave Redding, who were higher above me, I didn't really have as much contact with them that regularly, but they really helped me grow as a person before then coming back into club football. But just working with high quality staff in an environment which was thriving at the time. As soon pretty much in the first couple of months of me working there, the England team won the under-17s and under-19s tournaments, and it was clear like momentum within the England camp and belief that things were going to be really positive in the upcoming years, which has sort of played out. There's been a lot of young players come through the pathway for club and country and go on to do some excellent things. It's funny sometimes the actual players in the pathway who were great at the sort of under 17s haven't necessarily transferred it to be top like people expected. But yeah, I think that's one of these things you live and learn, I guess.
Yeah, I mean I mean that pathway or that step from Colts United to the FA. I mean, that's quite a big jump. I mean, I really want to kind of get from you a little bit. What do you think the key to that sort of job was, or to achieve that job, and then what would you say the biggest sort of takeaway from your experience with the FA was?
Yeah, I mean the key reason why I got the job that I did probably was because of the experiences I had in my 20s, working a lot in a one man band or in a small team as such. You have to do a lot more, and I think Reese liked a lot of characters who had been involved in multiple areas and had that kind
Yeah.
of ability to work with lots of coaches, ability to get across data and make it make sense to people. I remember
I
from
guess that's the key, Johnny. No, like as you're saying, it's that relationship about how it's not just numbers for the sake of numbers.
Hmm.
And I guess that's what you were saying before about
Yeah.
the physio at Co United. Tony was
Hmm.
is what this information that we have. How is it useful? You know, it's not just numbers for the sake of numbers. So, as you're saying there, in terms of the role, sorry to cut you off. For me, it's such a key point. Is understanding, you know, the experience you've got coaching within the academy and your performance analysis that has enabled you to better understand from a coaching perspective how that information can translate to benefit those players, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back to my interview at Wembley. I had like an hour's kind of presentation that I was given lots of different data from Instat, Opta, all sorts of information on this international game, to come up with a report of how do we progress play effectively, and talk about our insight that you could deliver within that hour. So it was put on you a little bit, and I think most analysts would have approached the role by just using the data, um, which was given, and there was a lot of objective metric data. But I think I probably tried to separate myself from that by not using any of it, to a certain extent. Like, it
Yeah,
was one of those things where the game that we were looking at, I think it was against Slovenia, or I think it was one of those kind of nations where, um, we were looking at certain individuals in midfield who the metrics were saying they had ball possession, was completion fine and everything like that. But actually, the game context was saying they weren't receiving in the right areas. But in terms of being behind the opposition midfield, that context of how well did they receive between the lines to then create attacks or create dangerous possession, and it was one of those things where most people probably would turn up, have all this data, and go, okay, Jordan Henderson completed this. This was the insight of his data. And it was like, well, no, that wasn't what the game was. Like, in that particular game, England really struggled to break the midfield line of the opposition because our midfielders were deep. And in the second half, it was easier because they were in a low block. The context had changed to the role of number eights, as basically I went on to. And yeah, with that was obviously probably a reason to stand out, I guess, within an interview, is show perhaps skills beyond just basic analysis, I guess. And yeah, I think Reece employed a number of people who were probably in similar sort of backgrounds or similar mindsets to approach of data, to go into that area of subjectivity or coach frame of data, and not just feel we're dealing in the black and white, we're dealing in the grey, which I kind of always felt from a coaching perspective that not enough made sense to people, or there was always that but kind of question. And yeah, that that kind of thing, it was helped by my experiences and being involved with
yeah,
multiple people and really understanding what coaches want, or different coaches want in that sort of early phase. And then not really just going with what a manager wants, actually being able to challenge and say, well, actually, that's not actually that helpful, and probably go about it in that sense as well.
no,
But
it's fascinating. To be fair, I go back to what you said before about Tony and physio and stuff like that. Really challenging you, and yeah, I guess that's what ultimately makes a really good department or a really good group of staff that are really trying to push each other to think, okay, actually, is this the right way? And I would definitely say from a coaching perspective at Cole United, with some of the people that we worked with, especially when all the youth awards were first rolled out with us, those things where you challenge yourselves, you challenge each other, really do push you on as individuals. And I think that is testament to you and testament to you achieving that role with the men's senior team at the FA, because those experiences that you've gained from a coaching perspective, analytical perspective, the challenges that you'd had, the questions that you'd posed, you've been posed and you posed yourself, then allowed you in that interview and your pathway to go, actually, okay, I've got this information, but actually, traditionally, okay, this might be the way, but actually, what is the best way? What is the way that the coaches, the managers, the players need this information to actually move forwards? And coaching and life is all about taking those steps forwards and moving forwards. And it sounds obviously like your interview and the package that you put together within that and the way that you work is exactly that. Is a case of, right, with your growth mindset, okay, this is what we can do to benefit us as a nation, as a squad, as a team. And actually this information is much more valuable if we actually put into context, right, this is a situation, this is a scenario, this is what's happening. Actually, as you said, are these players just, what is their pass completion rate? Everyone talks about, the team's got 90% pass completion rate or 80% possession, whatever. Okay, but where is that? Are we actually making entries into the final third, entries into the penalty box? What are those chances? We could spend probably an hour on XG and all of that and really go into depth. So that might be something for another episode. Otherwise, we're going to be here for 2 hours, Johnny.
Definitely, I know. I get the kind of lessons it effect from the FA was working on projects as well, which were like what it takes to win kind of projects, whether it be throw-ins, corners analysis, stuff which I'd never got to the kind of depths of. You can't get to it when you're just a club analyst. You can never really have the time, but at the FA you had the time to really dig into the detail. But even from more of a individual player profiling aspect, which was the main role that I was within, I was challenged still within that. I delivered a meeting with Steve Holland, Gareth Southgate, and I think there was a couple of other people who were senior people in there. And it always stick in my head because I had a lot of perhaps contextual data within this, and it was bringing forward some insights into certain midfield players. I think Harry Winks, Jordan Henderson, Eric Dyer, and one or two others who were probably midfield players at the time in the squad. How well are they doing? Obviously, Harry Winks was very good at knitting the game together, still is. But it was quite funny. Got to the hour at the end of the presentation, and Steve looked at me and just went, "John, that's really good stuff, really informative, but quite frankly, you've wasted my time for an hour." And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" He went, "Well, unfortunately, certain players, I won't name which ones, but the key reason why they're not in the squad is things you're not reflecting, positioning, marking and tracking, doing jobs defensively, that, making the right game decisions defensively, controlling transition." And I looked and just went, "You're right. You're right." We're not reflecting performance enough still. We've tried to get contextual lens onto data to try and bring things forward, but it's still nowhere near enough. It's not helpful because, coaches like experienced guys like Steve, who's watched thousands of games, won Champions Leagues. Well, he clearly has a broader sense of the game than I do. And you have to understand, well, he's going to be a big factor in why players get selected. And if you want to use data within the evidence base of selection, well, you've got to have reflective data of performance. It's not enough. Otherwise, it's almost putting 90% focus on 40% of what makes someone good. And it doesn't make sense. And sometimes you do need people like how Steve was, rather than sitting quiet and thinking, whatever, I'll move on. He actually was good enough to say something. And you go, well, actually, we're going to go away and then work on those things because it's a good thing you said it, because otherwise we'd think, well done, pat on the back. But actually, if it's not actually helpful in making decisions, well, what are we doing here? Kind of aspect, and you have to keep digging into that sense and not think like you know all the answers, because it's not until you work with the people, some of the people I've worked with who have got tremendous understanding of the game compared to me, that you need those people to lean on and be honest as well. You need them to be
Yeah,
honest and engage, which is hard.
yeah. I mean, it's fascinating, and I guess those experiences and those challenges that you faced in those moments, looking to move on to where you are now with Norwich is probably, especially in the position you are in now, has probably again helped push you and develop you to take that sort of next step up
Yeah.
within club environment. And obviously the pathway that you've taken through Norwich is quite an impressive one, and you are really in a position now where you can have a big impact on the club.
Yeah, I mean that's the aim. These things take time. You know, it, it's at least going to be something where I'm working with multiple departments, and again, I've probably put it on myself of knowing the areas where I'm not so strong at is probably areas which I need to get, understand a bit more depth of how things have changed, whether it be physical performance, kind of aspects have grown since I've really spent too much time with it in sort of the early part of my career. But if I want to be a leader or someone who's ahead of an organization at some point in my career, I've got to um, not think what I know is good enough, because it might be
Yeah,
good enough to lead one area, but even then, the actual leadership aspect is skill sets that aren't the reason why you got the role, if that makes sense. I think
yeah.
that's one of
I
the
mean, just
things.
just for some context. Sorry, Johnny. Just for some context for the viewers, what has been? Obviously, I know you've just transitioned into a new role, but what was the sort of title of your previous role at Norwich, and then what is your sort of role now? Just to give a bit of
Yeah.
context.
So I've moved from head of technical scouting, so more of looking after video and data insights within the player recruitment or player ID kind of phase of scouting, but now moved into a player insights or head of player insights role, which again is trying to knit together some longitudinal kind of pieces as well as certain week to week game insights or trends within the game. And it does link back to some of the project and insights work that I did with the national team, whether it be like how it was on throw-ins, penalties, projects which were delivered in the tournament. But yeah, it's trying to knit those things together and try to make sense of the data, or try to help build some insights which people can pick up and get without thinking about it too much. And sometimes it's a case of getting the right dosage at the right time for people, or making it visually appealing enough that they can just get it without having to know exactly the depth of what metrics what and what's good and what's not. It's sometimes just trying to tell people what they need to know quite quickly is important. And it's something that I took as a lesson from the FA, was adding that context or my opinion on top of the objective data to actually say, well, this is the actual insight I want you to take away. Because quite often there's that gap of not knowing, have they took the right message? Have they really understood it as well as I understand it? And sometimes there is an assumption kind of gap between the two.
Yeah. So I guess the key thing for us to look at is to see how Norwich do over the next season or two, and
Yeah.
see what the recruitment's like, see what the players are like. I know obviously we've had some good conversations about some of the players that have come in, and I can remember coming to a couple of games and watching some of the players that you've given advice on and feedback on, and it's good when you see those players that you do that research on, you do that scouting on, and you look at all those metrics, you look at all the analysis and stuff that you do behind the scenes, because it's very difficult for people to see that until they actually see the player there for the club and for the team. And there's so much work that goes behind the scenes in terms of, for example, what you do to bring those players, to bring the right players into the club, into the team. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how the team does, and how the recruitment goes at Norwich over the next, obviously a couple of years ago to now, and for the next couple of years, and see. Hopefully, we might see Norwich back in the Premier League very soon. I guess.
Let's hope so. Obviously, the club has been run in an extremely sustainable way, and how they've grown despite not making huge investment in terms of like just on the playing squad like you see in other clubs, is really testament to like the key people, people like Stuart Webber, Delia Smith, who've been involved in those kind of decisions. But the club has grown so much in this time. Obviously, when I was an academy coach coming there 10 years ago, it's a completely different environment to what it is now. It's a proper elite environment, and they've invested in those kind of areas off the pitch, which has grown it for everyone. But
Yeah.
it's very fortunate in that sense, because you can go into a lot of other clubs who've had that Premier League money, and it tends to go away with all the players, and transfer fees,
Yeah.
not necessarily left as much behind, or the club in a better place. But I think obviously Stuart Webber's leaving soon from Norwich, but he's took forward the club in the right way. And sometimes you do take the short-term flack of the club being yo-yo over the previous seasons, but the club as a whole, as an entity, has been moved on to a better level in that time.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the rewards over the next couple of seasons, and hopefully that might be this season for you, Johnny. Really, your journey, your pathway is so interesting, and really, I just want to try and just get a couple of sort of summary points for professionals out there, and
Mm-hmm.
this could be for analysts, this could be for coaches, it could be for scouts. What sort of professional advice, if you were to give two or three sort of key bits of advice for people who are watching, what would you say to them to try and help progress in the game, or to try and get a position that you're in now, or for someone to improve and get further in their career? What would you say to them?
Well, I think we touched on the first bit of being interdisciplinary has helped me, and really giving time to other areas to then broaden what your skill set is. Your knowledge of a certain area, not an expert until you know the bigger picture. For me, and that's something that I've always took on is trying to engage in other things which probably are weaker areas for you, and have that kind of what it takes to win mentality, is something I've tried to do across more of my career, of making sure, well, what does it take? What does good look like? And not necessarily assume, one, you know all the answers, and two, don't expect even the people that you work with to know all the answers as well. Sometimes you've got to go out for yourself
Yeah.
into different environments, and take on those experiences as well. But yeah, I've probably got a few on top of that. I think the first thing is working hard. Working hard's a given, but working smart isn't. Like people tend to fill up their time working tremendously hard, but necessarily don't communicate everything of what they're either doing, or even have that kind of communication skills with the people who are the end users of what you deliver, whether it be players, whether it
Okay.
be
Yeah.
coaches or managers or CEOs, or that actually communication skill between the two can mean you can actually save a lot of time for yourself. And that's why you'd end up working smart rather than filling your time working tremendously hard. And I felt in the early part of
Oh, that's a
my
good point.
20s, I worked really hard, and I didn't work really smart. And it wasn't until I started really the penny dropping on some of the lessons that I learned from some managers and coaches, and like I pointed out with Tony at Colchester, some key people who helped shape that. Am I really adding value? Like, and actually, sometimes having that honest conversation with yourself is, am I actually benefiting the team, or am I hindering the team by delivering this kind of content? And sometimes you have to really be quite brutally honest with yourself and understand, well, is this giving the right bang for buck over what I'm sacrificing to the net gain of the team and or the person that's going to get your work? I think sometimes just having that mindset to not, be arrogant enough to think you know all the answers, but try to get that kind of relationship with people, so you're getting to see what they actually want and what might be helpful for them in the longer period. And obviously within that, there's always been that process of manager being like the top dog, and so sometimes that's been a calamity, not a calamity, but it's been a big mistake in football, where people just rely on what the manager calls and says, right, we're doing this, or I want this, and never questioning anything or really having a discussion over it. They just do, if that makes sense. And the thing is, I think Dave Redding at the FA was really good about this, and probably taking things off of the coaches to say, no, we're not having this kind of unicorn leader sort of situation where the one person who's probably the least informed person in the room makes the calls over things. And, I was lucky to have certain managers, even going to Gareth Southgate, who didn't want to be that type of leader, wanted to make people have, give their input and feel like they're valued in stuff, which, is a massive part of it.
That's a team, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're probably the more key things for me. I think, I've tried to have this kind of haven't come this far to come this far kind of attitude. I've tried to keep that with me throughout. You're not going to get immediate progressions in football. Like, it's not going to be a job and then bounce all the time. But you've got to try and understand where you're weaker at and keep trying to improve those things. And quite often the skills you need to lead a department are not the skills that get you the role, if that makes sense. Like, that sometimes you're good because you're a good role model at doing stuff and work hard, but actually skills to lead things are very, very different. And are practiced skill, if that makes sense. So, I think, they're probably the key lessons for me over my sort of time as a professional. But I certainly say,
no, I think
facing that challenge.
I think they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, without a shadow of a doubt, like, through your journey, and like I said to you before, I think the growth mindset that you've shown in your pathway to working in different areas of the game, without a shadow of a doubt, has allowed you to get the role and position you're in at the moment. And there's no question about that. So I think, the advice you've given for people watching is invaluable. Johnny, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. We are well over the time that we planned, but the information that I think you've given has been really, really valuable, and I've really enjoyed having this chat with you. I've already taken a few things from this conversation.
Rabbited on for a little bit while there.
It's good. The context, I think, the context is something that I think sometimes we miss out on, and I think that's something that you've given us in this episode. So, thank you for the context. Thank you for the advice, and hopefully for the professionals out there watching and listening. Hopefully they've taken bits from it as well. So, Johnny, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's great to have this with you as well. So yeah, I've really looked forward to it, and it hasn't disappointed, Johnny. So yeah, thank you very much.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm a bit worried. My journey doesn't seem anywhere near as extraordinary as yours and Lloyd's. Yeah, so at least I've
It's
been able
very
to.
different.
Yeah, exactly. You've been super brave in different decisions across both your careers so far, and yeah, I kind of wish I'd had the bravery like you guys to really go out there and take huge risks. Like it could be seen to people, and yeah, I've sort of had to find
Yeah,
my own journey, I guess, like you said earlier.
but we all take risks. Coaching and all of our journeys. At some point, we all have to take risks, and you do that when you go for different interviews for different positions and roles. And obviously, my journey, Lloyd's journey, everyone is different. And as you say, I thank you for the kind words, because there is obviously a certain element of risk to those things in terms of what you do when you go abroad and stuff like that. But everyone takes risks. You've taken many risks in terms of to get where you are, and I think that your job, your role that you're doing now, has been absolute testament for all of the roles, all of the experiences that you've had through your career, and it's one that for me has been fascinating to talk with you regularly on, and I hope and without doubt that there's going to be questions I'll probably get from people, and I'll tag you on. I'll tag you in the post on Twitter, so I'm sure maybe people are going to drop you a few questions and stuff like that, as long as you don't mind that.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. No, that's no problem at all.
No,
Yeah,
no, good stuff. Well, Johnny, we're going to finish it there. We're over the hour mark, so we've gone well into
yeah.
added on time. But
We're
actually, it's
going
quite an
ball in
interesting thing
play
because the
time.
Premier League. Yeah, that's the thing. The Premier League actually are going to do more added on time. So this
Yeah,
is not going to be a rare occurrence for people watching the Premier League this
yeah.
season. So
Get used to
I think we
the
can
added
give
on
that
time of
excuse.
10, 15 minutes. it's
Yeah,
it's a
we
given.
are
So,
we are 17 minutes, so that is going to be
yeah,
that's
that's
going to be a
right.
first.
Yeah, I'll probably say
Um,
we're ball in play time over 90 minutes at the minute. So, yeah, we'll
yeah,
take that.
we're definitely there. Well, Johnny, thank you very much for your time. I
Yeah.
massively appreciate it. All the best for the season. I'm definitely going to be rooting for you and Norwich to have a positive season, and look forward to seeing you guys back in the Premier League. Hopefully this time next season.
Yeah, hope so. Thanks very much, Si. Yeah, no, great talking.
No worries, Johnny. Take care and speak soon. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, bye, mate.